Hello and welcome to the fourth and last edition of the Nordic Spotify streams loveAudio.
Today is all about audio, and this session is designed for you to be informed, to be inspired, and hopefully this session will excite you about all the different opportunities within audio going into 2021.
If you have any questions during the streams, don't hesitate to contact us here. Did you know that 85% of Gen Zs believe brands need to bring genuine value to our society and not just sell products? What is important for this audience and how does streaming audio help them to reach this audience? This and much, much more will be covered today. My name is Caroline Moll, and together with my colleague Patrick Kleiner, we will guide you through the next hour of exciting content. So Patrick, what are we going to talk about today?
We have some really good content for you today, and first we're going to look at the Spotify Culture Next report. This is our global study where we look at the recent trends that are shaping millennials and Gen Zs today. But we're also going to look at how you as marketers can use audio to reach them. Today we have also with us our partners and friends from Group M and Omnicom. From Group M, we have Andreas. He is here to talk you through an econometric study that they have recently done with their telco client, Penny. And from Omnicom, we have Jesper and John, who is talking you through a meta study looking at the role of digital audio within the media mix model. And of course, it wouldn't be a Spotify stream without some music, right? So, ending this session, we have a great performance straight from our studio in Stockholm. But let's start with the Culture Next report.
At Spotify, we understand our listeners. So for the second straight year, we checked in with the streaming generation to hear where culture is headed. Introducing Culture Next 2020.
My generation.
My generation?
My generation is globally conscious.
We're curious,
Bold.
creative.
We are awake.
Loud. But also very stressed.
We're alive.
Love my generation.
"2020 will definitely be a year that will define generations to come. It has created new and accelerated existing cultural trends among young people. I believe probably most of you would agree with me that content has become an even more vital part of our lives this year. What you have watched, what you have listened to is actually more talked about today when you're not able to do much outside the house. Discoveries and new releases are maybe most talked about. And maybe this is most true with the audience that we're looking at specifically in this Culture Next report, Gen Zs and millennials. We define them as entertainment heads, which means that they're in constant need of entertainment from the moment that they wake up until they go to bed. And that's why it's quite interesting that in our study that we found that 56% of the asked actually agree that there's too much visual stimulation and that audio can be an escape from that. And that's where our Culture Next report comes in. How you can use audio to reach this audience. Culture Next is our global study where Spotify has explored Gen Zs and millennials and how they're influencing everything from art, business, technology, and culture at large in the new normal. Our big Culture Next report includes 5 different trends. For you today, we're looking at 3 of these a little bit deeper. These 3 trends are Gen Z starts from scratch, progress takes over partisanship, and sound is getting smarter. If we look at the first trend, which is Gen Z starts from scratch, this is all about Gen Z's rethinking traditional systems. If that's the traditional education or a traditional career path. I mean, this is an audience that has been growing up in an already disrupted economy with gig jobs, telecommuting, and career shifts. And this has even more increased over the last year with the global pandemic. And comparing them towards older generations, this is an audience that has access to everything and has been growing up with the opportunity to be able to pull up any virtual kind of content at any given time. Maybe it's therefore no big surprise that in our study that 67% of the people that we spoke to in our study said that older generations can't act as guides to adulthood because just too much has changed in the world. And that number is even before the global pandemic. So who will guide this generation? Well, according to themselves, it will be themselves. The access that the internet has given them gives them the freedom and the creative opportunity to be their own bosses. And that's why many of these people actually define themselves as creators and entrepreneurs. And that's where tech platforms such as Spotify comes in. Spotify don't just provide them with the opportunity to discover and connect. They also enable them to collaborate, create, and independently share, sell, and promote their work. Quite interesting if we look at Spotify's Wrapped, where we look at the most streamed artists from 2020. The top female artist is, yet again, Billie Eilish. And if not, she is a creator, creating much of her music from her own bedroom. And that's probably where marketers can come in, creating meaningful connections with this generation of consumers by creating and making tools available for them. Connect with them even more. The second trend we will look at is progress takes over partisanship. This year, change feels more important than ever. Causes such as COVID, the climate crisis, or racial injustice has become super important subject. And when this generation aims to create a better new normal, they expect brands to come on board as well. And that means supporting social and environmental causes and being true to their commitments. Not only, that well-timed hashtag, but actually showing true commitment and follow through. Or as one person actually quite nicely put it in the study, it means joining and supporting movements and not only getting involved in the moments. When we asked what they wanted to see out of brands do right, 95% choose purpose over politics. Because if there's one thing that we know that this generation have no problem with identifying is imposters as well. And their advice to how brands should meet these moments: be inclusive, be purposeful, give back, and be transparent. And maybe most importantly, take action. Caroline.
For our last trend, we asked the respondents which qualities make sound powerful to them. They answered that sound for them is emotional, therapeutic, and personal. They use audio to cope with stress and anxiety. And when social distancing began this year, they turned to guided meditation and wellness podcasts to help them decompress and stay calm. But what about the where? Can we detect a shift of trend in where and how we stream? Well, yes, we can. With less commuting and more working from home, we saw a bump in streaming across devices like computer desktops, TVs, smart speakers, and gaming consoles, all of which reinforces the humanity of sound. Gen Zs are early adopters, and as we use speech and voice more and more to control the tech in our devices, that intimacy grows. 60% of the young people we surveyed said voice makes us more sentimental towards our devices, and that sound is at the forefront of actually humanizing technology. A familiar voice creates a personal connection between a speaker and a listener. A little bit like the relationship between a podcast host and their followers. Podcast fans said it's easy to feel emotionally connected to a host, and that tuning in is like listening to a dear friend. At Spotify, we like to say that audio is a mirror of how we are truly feeling. In our July survey, our audience gave us good reason for that when they told us that music is something that has actually helped them keep them sane throughout this very, very difficult year. This last trend shows the intimate relationship brands can build with this young audience using Spotify as a platform to engage and interact. And with that, I am saying hello and very, very welcome to our guest speaker from Group M, Andreas Nordfors. Hi.
Hi.
You have created an econometric study for Penny, a new tech brand in Sweden, which you will present for us today.
Yes.
What does this mean for brands that wants to communicate and engage with this young audience?
So I think we'll show a good example how we can utilize the digital medias, especially related to video and audio, to really drive the engagement among this group and gain some foothold on the market where I think it's quite crowded. I mean, the telco market in Sweden is quite many strong brands currently. So I think, how to really kind of drive that from journey from scratch as a new brand. I think we have a good example of that.
That sounds truly exciting. Well, Andreas, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So I will tell about market mix modeling project we've done for Penny, studying the launch of the Penny brand during this year. And I think it's quite interesting, this study, because it really highlights the role of media, and it's also looking into how different types of media might be contributing in different types of ways, whereas we're seeing it's extremely important for this brand in generating sales quite rapidly in a market that's very crowded currently with very strong brands of existing players. So we'll zoom down into 3 different topics. Number 1, we'll focus down on the role of media in driving this particular launch of the Penny brand. Number 2, we'll look at how different medias has played different roles here in being more or less efficient in generating these sales for the Penny brand. And number 3, we'll look at how the Spotify medias has been very important in also being part of this mix and how we're looking at those medias going forward. So zooming down on what we actually have done here, because this is a quite sophisticated methodology, market mix modeling or econometric modeling, you got other names for this approach, is looking down at all the factors that is driving the sales. Media being one of them, but not the only factor we're considering. So we're looking at very serious data regarding seasonality patterns, the holiday patterns, the salary week patterns, etc. Then adding on information regarding the sales activities and campaign that's happened during the period. And really kind of adjusting for those. And then we're also adding data and information regarding the external factors, such as the COVID-19 patterns that's been extremely prominent during this year and really affected the consumer behavior, both in terms of media, but also in terms of consumption. Consumer confidence index, for example, the weather and different types of interest rate patterns. And then finally, after doing all these adjustments and all these kind of corrections to the data, we're looking at the effect from media. So we're doing this kind of serious exercise just not to overestimate the effect from media, where we might see in a more kind of simple approach that the effect might be driven by media, while it is in reality is being some completely other factor that's been the underlying confounding factor for driving this. So we want to be extremely serious by identifying and isolating the effect from media by doing this kind of exercise. And what we do see, just looking at this from a simpler perspective, is of course that the new subscriptions has risen throughout the year. It started off with quite volatile levels in the beginning of the year, but then really took off during summer, and up until now in the autumn, it's been extremely high amount of new subscriptions coming in, being Penny subscribers on the broadband and the mobile subscriptions. Then we're also having, of course, a kind of step up in the media investments. So those have also been quite low during the beginning of the year, but then kind of really stepping up. And just by doing some kind of simple analysis, you can see that there's definitely some correlation happening here. So I mean, you're definitely having a rising pattern both in your subscriptions as well as the media investments. But what we want to be really careful about here is not making too quick conclusions, just looking at this from a correlation perspective, but really look at this from a stable econometric modeling causation perspective, which is what we're doing here. So by doing this kind of thorough exercise I just described in the previous slide, we can identify and isolate the effect from media related to the other factor that's also been part of driving this growth. And by doing this, we can actually see that the media is extremely important. So I mean, we're having 80% of these sales that's happened that's being a direct effect from the media investments that Penny has made. So I mean, media is extremely important to drive this growth. I mean, without the media, the growth would, in theory, then, of course, only be 20% of the current level. And this is quite significant for newer brands, typically. I mean, looking at more established brands, and we're having the kind of average telecom average here to the right. We're seeing that there's typically some base component there for more established brands. You're having these stores and the kind of basic distribution. Then you're having some effect from media, but that is more typically around 15% maybe of the total sales that's happening. Then you're having other external factors that might be even more prominent as well. So it's typically another kind of landscape on what's driving the business for a more established brand compared to this particular launch. So this is an extremely interesting case in really seeing the power of media and why it's so important to really use media as part of a growth journey for a new brand. Then we can zoom down and see how different types of media might be performing. So I mean, we can do this for media as a whole, which we saw was very important, but then of course, extremely interesting to see how different types of media might be contributing in different ways. And what we're looking at here is index number on how the different components in their current mix was driving the effect per invested krona. So I mean, how much money did you get back in sales given one invested krona for each and every one of these medias? And what we see here is that we're having both traditional medias that tend to be a bit more to the right, so being a bit less efficient in this case, and then having digital medias more to the left. I mean, so having social on top, we're having online video as a strong second, search being there in the middle together with display. So all of these are definitely having a role in driving the brand forward, but the digital ones, especially related to social media and the online video ones, they tend to be very strong for the brand of Penny in driving the sales. And then, of course, it's extremely interesting to zoom down into the online video bar, because even though you might label all these as online media or online video, they're still quite significantly different in terms of different types of properties. So let's just zoom down on the online video bar here and see how that looks from that internal ranking. And what you can see there is within that bar, we're having Spotify and YouTube, quite like, I would say, a bit of tie here on the absolute top. So those has been extremely successful. And if you remember the figures from the previous slide, you remember that social media had a bit under 200. Here we're seeing that Spotify and YouTube is actually being over 200 in terms of efficiency. So those has been extremely good and extremely important part of this mix in driving this launch. Then we're having the other types of online medias, a bit of different programmatic things there, and then we're having Viafree and the TV4 Play. That's been also significant and important for driving the growth here, but not as efficient in this case as YouTube and Spotify. So for this particular case, Spotify has been extremely successful in driving this growth. What we can see, and this is from another types of approach to address the effect you get from media. This is from a Spotify brand lift study, where you look at consumers that have been exposed and hasn't been exposed to ads on Spotify, and how those might be different in having different awareness regarding the Penny brand, different consideration on the brand, or different types of perceptions regarding the price worthiness of the brand. And what we're seeing here by comparing these two groups and the ones that has seen Spotify ads is that we're seeing an extremely high uplift in these groups. So it's extremely high effect from the ads that they've seen in actually kind of moving their minds in terms of both the general awareness and the kind of broad impact coming down to consideration, but also this kind of particular positioning of the brand, which has been so important in this brand intense category to drive. So this is one, I think, kind of angle to why Spotify in particular has been so important and so effective in driving effect for the Penny launch. That, I mean, the branding part here is extremely important. That's where kind of really Spotify shines. So zooming down on the key messages I think we looked at here, we're having a media, that media component to the launch and growth journey of Penny. That's been a significant part. It's been extremely important. We looked at the numbers. It's been around 80%. So basically 4 out of 5 sales krona is coming directly from media. So it's definitely a significant part of driving this. We also looked at different types of media. We saw that social online video were among the highest generating ones. So social on top there, online video as a second one. But then if we zoom down into online video, we actually identified that Spotify and YouTube as online video were actually the most efficient medias in the mix as a whole. And reasons for that, as I mentioned just briefly in the end here, I mean, it's that Spotify is a platform that allows you to kind of really communicate your brand in a good way and drive both this kind of broader awareness as well as the interest, as well as the positioning and these important attributes for the brand. That's so important to really drive this launch in a successful way and get some kind of foot grip on the market to kind of gain from. So that's all I had. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Andreas, for taking us through those very interesting learnings. Now, let's zoom out for a moment and broaden our perspective together with our friends from Omnicom. Very warm welcome to John and to Jesper.
Thank you.
Hi, Caroline. Thank you for having us.
You have done a mixed modeling study this year that where you have tested how digital audio performs in terms of business impact. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted to do that study.
Yeah, so basically we're trying to get brands to think different about marketing. Think about the value that it brings rather than the costs it incur. And this study was very much in line with that message.
Fantastic. Well, I know that the study is fresh off the analysis bakery, and we are very, very keen on hearing about it. So guys, kick it off.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. So we would like to start off our section by talking a bit more about why we wanted to do this study and why we wanted to conduct it now. And as we're all basically aware of at this point, the global pandemic has been a hard strike towards the media and advertising industry. In a matter of fact, the global ad spend is estimated to be down by a whopping $97 billion in comparison to the initial prognosis of 2020. And what's even worse, at least for some media, is that certain media types seem to be more likely to get kicked in the face by the pandemic than others. For example, digital stands its ground pretty good, with actually even increasing its spend versus initial prognosis. Whilst the guys working with the out of home can probably expect nothing but coal in the Christmas stocking this year. And to understand why it is so, we have to look a bit closer at the main dynamics of marketing and look at it from a funnel perspective. And when doing so, it becomes quite evident that the brand-focused or upper funnel medias, where Spotify, despite being a groundbreaking digital venture in many ways, is generally considered to be acting, is taking the hard blow of the pandemic, whilst conversion-focused media, or media that's more performance-driven, or a general misconception, sales-orientated, are standing its ground in a pretty good way.
So during this economic turmoil, how do we prove Spotify's business value and move it up the food chain so that your lunch money isn't taken by SEM and other lower funnel medias? Basically, what we do is that we look at the data. So what we wanted to do is create a study that could get large market traction. So we know that we needed to have lots of money. So we have a study of over 2.3 billion SEK in 34 different advertisers over 3 years and in 6 different categories to make sure that the data is solid and there. And what we wanted to measure and prove was, what's in it for me? If I use online audio, what is the return on investment? So we wanted to measure the short-term ROI. But we also wanted to measure how it affects the brand, because you need brands in order to generate what we call long-term ROI as well. And lastly, we wanted to study to see what the synergies were if you used online audio in conjunction with linear audio. And what are the results, John?
Well, let's start looking at the branding variable, because that's super important when you talk about marketing in general. And basic marketing 101 says that if you have a strong brand, you can also expect significant growth in the longer term. Strong brands can also, for example, house larger price premiums. They have more loyal clients or customers. And there is generally a very positive correlation with sales. So looking at the results, this is actually very good for online audio, because what we can see is that online audio is a super efficient entity in order to drive brand metrics. In a matter of fact, online audio stands out with an ability to drive brand metrics up to 5 times more efficient than other media types in the survey. But if we move a bit further down the funnel, which obviously is even more important in these times, and look at short-term ROI, we can also see that online audio sits on great abilities when it comes to generating actual sales. In a matter of fact, the online audio that we have looked at in this study has an average short-term ROI in actual sales of 2.6 times the money that was invested. To put this in relation to the other media in the study, this is 40% higher efficiency than the average media ROI in the study. So, putting together 1 and 1, that the cliché says that it equals 3, and so is the case in this case as well for online audio, because if we look at the longer term ROI, combining the short-term ROI with the branding efficiency, we get an even stronger result for online audio. So the long-term ROI is 3.7 times the invested money, which actually is 140% better than the average media ROI in this study.
Not all companies have sales as their primary KPI. This guy is not the greatest skier, but maybe in his daytime job, he has a job where he gets people to subscribe to a service, book a flight, sign up to a casino, or maybe book a test drive. And our study shows that using online audio, you can actually save 40% of your money and buy really cool Christmas gifts for your employees. Or possibly you could buy even more Christmas lights, because what we found in the study is basically if you're using audio, use more audio. So by combining linear audio and online audio, you get an efficiency uplift of about 70% versus only using linear. To conclude, if you want consumers to buy something today or tomorrow, or do something, or love your brand tomorrow, they should be using online audio. Back to you, Patrick.
Thank you, Jesper and John, for those insights. It's really interesting to hear about the potential of audio and the impact it can have for brands and their campaigns. In addition to the Culture Next trends that I took you through earlier, we went out on the town and asked a few people representing both Gen Zs and millennials and heard what they had to say. Let's have a listen.
Mest positiv. Ja, när det gäller skolan och liksom gymnasiet.
Nej, men jag ser väl positivt på framtiden. Det kan väl inte bli så mycket värre än vad det är idag.
Jag ska säga positivt, hoppas jag. Ja, alltså med allt det här med coronagrejer så hoppas man att det liksom blir bättre. Det känns jävligt tråkigt just nu.
Positiv.
Positiv.
Både och. Det känns väl väldigt dumt att tänka negativt på framtiden. Eller alltså,
det har ju varit ett jävla skitår. Jag tänker att det kan ju bra bli bättre.
Positiv. Ja, men jag tycker... Jag har hopp. Ja, jag tycker ändå det är typ så tekniken och så. Om vi tänker typ global uppvärmning och så. Ja.
Jag tänker i alla fall på det att jag brukar varumärken och produkter och sådana som tänker på samma sätt som jag gör. Nej, men jag tycker att det är viktigt att de jobbar trovärdigt och att att de inte bara håller på att donera pengar till någon konstig organisation, men att jobbar aktivt inom företaget med så att det ser genuint ut.
Egentligen så, alltså de gör ju bara det, alltså olika företag för att liksom, alltså det känns inte som att de gör det för att de faktiskt bryr sig, utan det är bara för att så här, det ska verka bra PR. Liksom.
Beror helt på produkten. Alltså ska jag köpa shampoo är det inte jätteviktigt om vad de står i politiska frågor, men ska jag handla mat kan jag tycka miljöfrågan är ganska viktig.
Och jag tror så länge man inte tycker väldigt eller olika så jag tror jag det är ganska lugnt. Så länge man inte har väldigt radikala idéer.
De kan ju visa att de bryr sig om de vill liksom visa det. Vill visa stöd och sånt till sådana movements, till exempel Black Lives Matter. Jag tycker att det är en bra sak.
Absolut, ja. Det är ganska skönt liksom, om man tar en paus och så vidare, så bara lyssnar på en podd och lite musik. Det hjälper rätt mycket.
Ja, det gör jag faktiskt. Jag lyssnar på nyheterna på podcast på morgonen när jag sitter på bussen. Och då lägger jag bort telefonen och lyssnar på det och bara tar det lugnt innan jag kommer till jobbet. Så man lugnar ner sig lite på morgonen.
Om jag ska plugga, då har jag väldigt lugn musik, podcast, JLCs podcast, så jävla rolig. Lite vanlig popmusik.
Ja, men det är så nu när vi har börjat plugga så lyssnar man, alltså det ändrar ganska mycket vad man lyssnar på. Ja, och det är så här lugnande.
Ja. När jag pluggar eller ska sova, då lyssnar jag helst på någon lugn musik som jag kan koncentrera mig på läxan, men ändå kan jag liksom lyssna på det.
Ja, mycket.
Pluggar till skolan.
Men när jag transporterar mig typ. Från hem till skolan.
Alltså,
det är väl bara skönt att ha någonting i öronen. Det är kul att lyssna på musik och lyssna på podcast.
På R&B och lo-fi. Ja, väldigt blandat. Men så här, lite lugnare musik när man pluggar och kanske lite mer så här pop och high-book när man typ sitter i en bil och gör tråkigt.
Jag lyssnar på mycket housemusik och elektronisk musik.
Tutto balutto.
Oj, inte så mycket podcast, mest musik.
Ja, så här.
Ja, lite faktiskt. Men jag tror speciellt jag börjar mer lyssna på podcast snarare över musik. Men också lite mer äldre musik, gammal musik, alltså 70-80-tal och lite så.
Gud ja. I början av året då lyssnade jag mest på så här popmusik och mer glad musik. Och nu när det har blivit så här corona och lite knasigt, då lyssnar jag mer på så här mycket lugnare musik som gör mig mer typ så här avkopplad.
Lite, för att alltså jag har börjat lyssna på mera lugn musik för att det har varit så hektiskt överallt.
Our next guests are the two podcast hosts for the podcast Sweet But Psycho. With over 70,000 streams per episode, it has become an instant success on Spotify. And about 75% of their audience is under the age of 30. So I thought, what better way to understand what makes good content for Gen Z and millennials than to call them up and ask them. Josephine and Elin, thank you so much for being with us today. How are you guys feeling?
Great! How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I want to start off by also congratulating you on your podcast and the success you've had with it on Sweet But Psycho. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This podcast has been a great success with an audience under 30. What would you say the recipe is for that success?
I just feel like you basically have to be yourself, of course, and we talk about things that most people don't talk about. And I think it's important that we do that because obviously young people need that kind of inspiration, and we just feel like we're doing something important, I guess.
Because most of the things we talk about, people will be embarrassed to talk about. And I used to be embarrassed about that, but since I start talking about it, it feels so normal, and I think people really appreciate it.
I feel the same.
Yeah. We normalize things that normally we would be embarrassed about.
Yeah, and we're so different too. Like, always when we talk about things, since we're like so different, people can agree with Elin sometimes, and then sometimes they agree with me, and it makes like we just have like a good dynamic, I think, and people can relate to us so easily.
Would you also say that the format of podcast actually allows people to maybe relate to you even more with the power of audio, or how is that format working for you?
Yeah, I think because in podcasts they don't see you; they only listen to your voice. So it's very personality because they don't see you, they don't judge you by how you look or something like that. They just listen to you and get to know you as a person and not anything by how you look.
Yeah, and we basically look like trash when we record our podcast.
We go there, we wake up, we go there.
Yeah,
and
we just wake up and go there as we look. Like we never wear makeup or anything like that. And I just feel like it's vad skulle jag säga?
It's nice to not be judged by how you look.
Yeah.
And people just listen to you.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like doing a podcast, it makes like on social media as like Twitter and like Instagram, like TikTok, you have like a few seconds or just like a text where you type something, but when you're doing a podcast, you basically have like an hour of talking, so they can like really get to know you when you have a podcast.
I think most of us can probably relate to, after 9 months of working from home, that we might not always look our finest, I guess. You have worked quite a lot with brands as well as part of your podcast, but also on other platforms. When do you think that the content that you do together with brands work the best?
I feel like it works the best when we can basically be ourselves, when we don't have like a script or like someone telling you like you should say this and that about the collaboration. Like we can just like talk about it freely and in your like your own opinions. It's the best.
I agree.
And would you say that there is also times when it doesn't work? When do you have any examples of that?
We are very selective with who we work with. We only work with people and the brands that we feel like we can use, that we stand for, and we actually like the product. So when we also have companies that we say like no, because I can't represent that.
The company. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we only do collabs where we actually love the products and like love working with that specific brand. Yeah.
So this year has, I guess, been quite difficult, or at least different for you as well. What kind of audio or music have you listened to cope with this year?
Well, you go first.
Thank you. I'm a person that needs like positive vibes in my day, so I love to listen to comedy podcasts and positive music, so I can like get the energy.
You don't
from
listen to positive music.
No, I don't. I listen to sad music.
That's a lie.
Okay, I only listen to sad, heartbreaking music, but podcasts, I listen to funny comedy podcasts. Okay, and you?
Well, I'm the opposite. I only listen to like history podcasts and stuff like that.
And sad music.
That's the only thing I listen to.
So Spotify just released their Wrapped campaign now as well, when you're able to see which artists you streamed the most. Which artist did you girls stream the most this year?
Victor Lexell.
Yep.
I love him.
I love him too.
He's amazing.
He is really good.
And his new album is like, mwah.
Everything about him is mwah.
Oh, that's so cute.
I want to thank you so much for taking the time, and also a good luck with your podcast as well. And soon, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Dear all, we have reached the end of this Spotify stream, and it's actually time to wrap it up. But before we do so, I would like to extend a big thank you to all of you for attending today, and to all of our guests. And
But wait, hold on. Isn't this a Spotify stream? Don't we have a Christmas treat for our listeners?
ho, ho, ho. Of course we do. We have an amazing performance in the Spotify studio. So hit it off, Agustin.
Hello, my name is Augustine. So happy you could join us here in the studio today. With me I have Philip Brengesjö on bass. We're gonna play 2 songs for you. And the first one is called The Guts. Counting ticks from the clock, it's a morning to modest. She's finding parts of my face, funny looking and anxious. It's a cruel world before the eyes of these passionate sands. I would use her to stay alive if the ground were to bend. And maybe plus her hair for all I could end. She falls flat on the bed again. But there's something about the yellow covering her eyes with both hands. I on the other hand, I feel fine with the way I am. I walked around again, so figured out a way to make a man. Could you cut open all of my chest? I'm already too restless. Of course I'm feeling depressed. Find a way we could use it. It's a cruel world before the eyes of these passionate sands. I would use her to stay alive if the ground were to bend. Maybe plus her hair for all I could end. She falls right on the bed again. But it's something about the animal covering her eyes with both hands. I on the other hand, I feel fine with the way I am. I walked around again, so I figured out a way to make a man. We're pretenders. We're beaming with the sign of our times. That was my single Guts. Hope you enjoyed it. This next one is called Coast. Back on your back, because the lovers and the fools are rushing. The spring and the steps, hot heavy summers and the pools to bathe in. I need to lay my body down. Oh, how they took me out. His jacket sleeps over her shoulder. She said the other light. I need somebody to call. Oh Lord, I want the evening to be over. I'm just a little tired. I need somebody to call. Oh Lord.
Thank you, Spotify.